Imagine for a moment that every decision you make, from the morning cup of coffee you buy to the car you drive, is the result of a cold, perfectly rational calculation. That you are a supremely logical being, always in pursuit of maximum benefit at the lowest cost. Does it sound familiar? Or perhaps, does it seem a description deeply alien to the chaotic, emotional human nature you truly inhabit? For decades, this was the cornerstone upon which all economic science was built. The myth of Homo economicus, the economic man. A fictional being, a model that was, however, taken as a mirror of humanity. Today, we embark on an epic journey to discover the origins of economic psychology. The discipline that dared to challenge this dogma, that set out to explore the wild and fascinating territory of the real human mind. We will unravel how a historical critique of the rational economic man gave way to the proposal of a psychological man who is far more complex, contradictory, and ultimately human. Our story begins in the 19th century with the philosopher and economist John Stuart Mill. Although the idea is associated with earlier thinkers like Adam Smith, it was Mill who, perhaps unintentionally, outlined the definition of this abstract being. He described a being that acts to obtain the greatest amount of necessities, comforts, and luxuries, with the least amount of labor and physical self-denial. It was not a description of the real man, but an arbitrary definition, a useful model to simplify the complex mechanisms of the economy. This economic man behaved rationally to economic stimuli, being able to adequately process all information and act accordingly to maximize his utility or wealth. He was, in essence, a computer of flesh and blood programmed to optimize. But the cracks in this perfect model soon appeared. Even neoclassical economists, who adopted this concept to build elegant mathematical models, began to receive criticism. The most obvious one? The economy does not operate in a sterile laboratory. It operates in the real world, a world full of uncertainty, emotions, and social influences. Economic anthropologists like Marshall Sahlins, Karl Polanyi, and Marcel Mauss demonstrated through studies of traditional societies that people's choices in the production and exchange of goods followed patterns of reciprocity and gift economy which differed radically from what the Homo economicus model postulated. These systems were not based on maximization, but on building social relationships and reciprocity. And here comes the controversial element, the idea that still generates intense debate today. What if Homo economicus is not only an incorrect description, but also a dangerous prophecy? What if, by taking for granted that humans are fundamentally selfish and rational, we have designed educational, financial, and political systems that reward and reinforce precisely those behaviors, stifling our inherent capacity for cooperation, fairness, and empathy? A pivotal study conducted in 15 societies around the world showed that the Homo economicus model did not hold in any of them. Cooperation, not ruthless competition, was the norm when incentives and economic integration allowed it. This forces us to ask, are we modeling our economy on a lie that, by perpetuating it, is destroying us? Criticism continued to pour in from different fronts. Thorstein Veblen, John Maynard Keynes, and crucially, Herbert Simon introduced the concept of bounded rationality. Simon argued that, in reality, we do not have all the knowledge. Our computing power is finite and time is scarce. We make decisions that are good enough, not optimal. We are not gods of reason, but beings navigating a sea of incomplete information, using mental shortcuts, those famous heuristics, to survive. The definitive revolution came from two psychologists, Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. In the 1970s, with their prospect theory, they dealt a mortal blow to the heart of Homo economicus. They demonstrated, through simple experiments, that people value losses and gains asymmetrically. The pain of losing $100 is much more intense than the pleasure of gaining $100. And not only that, our judgment is plagued by systematic and predictable cognitive biases. Confirmation bias, which makes us seek information that confirms our beliefs. Risk aversion, which paralyzes us. The anchoring effect, which allows an arbitrary number to influence our estimates. Kahneman and Tversky were not saying we were irrational, but that our rationality had its own architecture, with factory flaws that economics could no longer ignore. The torch of this revolution was taken up by Richard Thaler, who, together with Cass Sunstein, would coin the concept of the nudge. Thaler, awarded the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2010, consolidated the field of behavioral economics. His work showed that if we understand these psychological biases, we can design choice architectures that help people make better decisions without restricting their freedom. An example from everyday life? When your company automatically enrolls you in the pension plan, but gives you the option to opt out if you wish. This small change, which leverages human laziness or the status quo bias, dramatically increases retirement savings rates. It is psychology applied to well-being. Economic psychology was born, therefore, from the fusion of these two disciplines. It is defined as the study of people's economic behavior, analyzing how the economy affects our conduct, and conversely, how our conduct affects the economy. It was no longer about looking at people as if they were Homo economicus. It was about observing the real Homo sapiens, with their fears, hopes, regrets, and joys. Let's think about everyday examples. Have you ever bought something in a limited time offer? That exploits our loss aversion. Why is it so hard to sell a falling stock or a depreciating house? Because of the disposition effect, we cling to what is lost for fear of making the loss real. Why does the same wine taste better if we are told it is expensive? Because our brain does not evaluate value objectively. It is constantly influenced by expectations and social contexts. Advertising, marketing, behavioral finance. All these fields now draw on the principles of economic psychology. The evolution of this fundamental idea has not stopped. After the 2008 financial crisis, it became clear that it was impossible to understand the collapse without considering mass psychology, overconfidence, and the herd behavior of investors. Today, this discipline continues to advance, investigating how economic stress impacts our mental health and developing real-time tools to assess our financial decisions. The proposal of the psychological man is that of an integral being whose economic decisions are, at their core, human decisions. Decisions about security, happiness, status, and a sense of belonging. So the next time you sit down to pay your bills, invest your savings, or simply choose between an expensive coffee and a cheap one, remember, you are not a Homo economicus. You are a Homo sapiens, a being of emotions and biases, of passions and imperfect calculations. An understanding that is the key not only to making better individual decisions, but to building a more humane and realistic economy. If this journey into the origins of economic psychology has made you rethink how you and the world around you function, if you believe it is time to leave behind the myth of the economic man and embrace the complexity of the psychological man, then do me a favor. Like this video, share your thoughts and debates in the comments. Do you think Homo economicus was a necessary error or a harmful myth? Subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive into the human mind, and suggest new topics you'd like us to explore together. Knowledge is the best investment you can make.